Not long after Craven's last hunt, Mary Jane has to go on a modeling trip while Peter remains in New York. When MJ calls, Peter excitedly answers, asking her what it's like out there. MJ responds, "Snowy and beautiful, and terribly lonely without you. I miss you, Peter." After Peter replies that he misses her too, MJ updates him that she'll be back home that weekend, to which Peter eagerly replies he'll be waiting with bells on. MJ remarks that it sounds kinky, and tells Peter she loves him before ending the call. Afterward, Peter thinks to himself, "One of the most beautiful women in the world loves me, and I still keep risking my neck for people I don't know? I gotta be crazy." Shortly after her return to New York, Mary Jane carries groceries home through the city's dark streets after a long day of apartment hunting, when Peter suddenly drops down on a web, startling her. Remarking that he almost gave her a heart attack, she jokes that she ought to make him sleep on the sofa for it. Then, after exchanging that they've both had rough days, Peter offers to give his wife's luscious legs a break and web swings her home, much to her delight. Upon their return, MJ listens as Peter updates her on his day of work, substituting at his old high school, reliving some painful memories there about a boy named Steve Petty, who was a loner like he was. MJ reassures Peter he may have been a loner, but he was never a loser, and cheers him up by offering they take a shower together. Later that night, Peter is suddenly awakened by his wife's side, his spider sense buzzing. Leaving the bed, he investigates the living room as the electricity inside goes haywire. After MJ wakes up and joins him, Peter heads to the roof to further investigate, but suddenly hears a scream from inside. Rushing back, he finds a superpowered villain holding MJ's arm and instantly recognizes him as Steve Petty. Announcing that he is now called Freak, Steve declares he is there to hurt Peter and to show him his pain. But Peter is injured just by touching Freak, and as Freak grabs MJ and takes her away, Peter is unable to stop him. Still injured, Peter thinks to himself that he can't fail his wife, and as he departs, he briefly sees the shattered frame of her wedding portrait lying on the floor. As Freak drags Mary Jane through the city streets causing havoc, she seizes the opportunity to run away when he is distracted by a police officer, but Freak uses his powers to shock her and prevents her escape. Meanwhile, Peter frantically swings through the streets following the trail of destruction, thinking that if Freak has hurt MJ, he'll kill him. At the same time, Freak has brought MJ to a rooftop and goes on a monologue, saying that Peter was like him and should have understood him and his pain. But Mary Jane fiercely defends her husband, which only angers Freak further. However, before Freak can hurt her, Spider-Man suddenly swings in, delivering a powerful kick, but gets shocked in the process. Worried for her husband, Mary Jane asks him if he is alright, but Peter just jokes back, saying that's usually his line. As Peter uses his quips to try to gain an advantage, MJ stands behind him, updating him on Freak and offering her guidance. But Freak suddenly grabs Peter with a power line, gaining the upper hand. Writhing in pain, Peter struggles to break free and begins to doubt himself. Seeing this, Mary Jane cheers Peter on, encouraging him and telling him to fight. Then, realizing that Freak is using his own pain to bring Peter down, MJ reassures Peter that while Freak hates the world, Peter cares about it, and that's his strength, and to use it. This fuels Peter with the strength to break free, and in a brief moment while Freak is distracted, Peter delivers a powerful blow to win the battle. Later at home, Peter again reflects on how he and Freak were once alike. But as MJ bandages his wounds, she serves as his guiding light, telling him he's better than he gives himself credit for. She emphasizes that he doesn't run from his feelings but accepts them. Then she adds, "I used to run, but you never did. That's why I love you, sweaty skin and all." Kissing her husband, she then prepares another shower for them to enjoy together. Soon, while home alone, Mary Jane gets an idea for Peter to shoot professional model portfolios as a way to make more money, so she sets up a camera to take pictures of herself in a bikini, aiming to let the photos do the convincing. As she poses on the sofa, she thinks how these pictures will do more than just convince Peter. They'll drive him up the wall. She then ponders how she could never have imagined herself being married while growing up, but now she can't imagine her life without Peter. She doesn't feel trapped at all. Instead, the love they share has truly freed her. As she dwells on her new perspective, Peter suddenly sneaks up, surprising MJ by pulling her onto the wall with him, using the opportunity to get a little action. Later that day, as the Parkers debate where to eat dinner, Peter sees a headline about Sin Eater's release less than a year after killing Jean DeWolf, which infuriates him. Mary Jane tells her husband he can't follow the man everywhere to ensure he stays in line. However, Peter suspects the Sin Eater won't need to know that if he pays him a visit and puts enough fear in him. Despite his plans scaring Mary Jane, Peter still storms off to carry it out. But Peter's plan backfires, as he learns that Sin Eater suffered permanent injuries from their last fight, fueling a fear of harming others that leads to a humiliating defeat by Electro. Returning home distraught and injured, Peter jumps in the shower just as MJ returns from her day out. Entering the bathroom to give Peter a surprise, MJ ends up flabbergasted at the sight of his bright red skin, remarking that he looks like a boiled lobster. As Peter crashes onto the sofa, a concerned Mary Jane attempts to console him, asking what happened. Peter recounts his day, adding that he feels guilty about Sin Eater, but he doesn't want to feel guilty, and that makes it even worse. Putting her arm around Peter, MJ responds, "You know, lover, I think that's why I fell for you. You're the only person I know who's more screwed up than I am." Shortly after, Peter violently awakes from a nightmare over his fears, only to find a startled MJ attempting to nurse his wounds in bed. As he apologizes and explains that he is at a loss and unable to trust his instincts, MJ half-heartedly jokes he could try trusting the Force, but then soberly admits that they'll just have to work it out the best they can. The conversation then turns to Peter's need to make money, prompting MJ to announce that she's landed a modeling gig on TV, which should help them with their finances. Later at her modeling gig, Mary Jane commands everyone's attention, including that of Electro, who watches on TV as she shines on stage, and from the crowd, Peter looks on, proud of his wife. However, Peter swings onto the stage as Spider-Man after the Sin Eater shows up, who is attempting to advertise his book about the death of Jean DeWolf. As MJ looks on, wondering what her husband is doing as he berates Sin Eater, Peter only ends up in a bad mental state again, regretting his decision to step onto the stage. Seeing this, Electro uses his powers of electricity to get to the studio, determined to end Spider-Man once and for all, and ends up humiliating him on live TV, after Peter is too fearful to fight back. The next day, Peter sulks as he is hit with a wave of bad press released about Spider-Man being a coward. Arriving home from a day of shopping, Mary Jane attempts to cheer him up with her humor, handing him a newspaper with all the negative articles clipped out. "Don't sweat it, Petey. You have my personal guarantee that there's not a thing in there that'll upset you." Peter retorts, "Real cute." In response, MJ proudly holds up her new outfit she got on sale. "You like it? It leaped off the rack and mugged me. What could I do?" Peter, however, clarifies that he meant the paper. Then, getting serious for a minute, MJ encourages him to sit down and have a real talk about his feelings with her, which results in Peter asking if she thinks he's a coward now too. MJ responds that she doesn't think Peter is scared of anyone but himself, and encourages him to try to let go. As Peter further elaborates about his fear being born from his encounter with Sin Eater, MJ dives back into her pop culture knowledge to give Peter fighting wisdom, straight from Rocky III, as a trick to build back his confidence. But the power suddenly goes out in the city, prompting Peter to leave abruptly, leaving MJ to watch him swing away from the window. Fortunately, Mary Jane was exactly right about her advice. When Peter finds Electro, he remembers her words. Rocky just kept letting himself get hit, so he could get himself worked up enough to rely on his instincts. MJ's advice gives Peter the strategy to unshackle himself from his fear and, finally, win the fight against Electro. Days later, Peter swings across the city to meet Mary Jane at a convention center, feeling great about their recent marriage, as well as a high-paying photo assignment that he recently received. Meanwhile, in a powder room at the center, Mary Jane and her modeling coworker Elise discuss the Slasher, a killer who has been targeting fashion models. Peter soon arrives, and while giving MJ a kiss, he is introduced to Elise. Then, as the newlyweds depart in a cab, MJ announces she and Elise will be modeling at an upcoming fall fashion expo. However, Peter says he can't go because he's landed a big photo gig that he excitedly announces will cover their income tax bill. But when MJ casually reveals she's already paid it, Peter feels like he's been kicked in the stomach, believing he's not doing his part in their marriage. When Peter suggests he skip his job to watch out for the Slasher instead, MJ encourages him to take the job anyway, firmly stating, "You've got a job to do. Go do it." Later, a crazed fan of Elise stages a fake murder attempt, so he can come to her rescue and be noticed to her as a hero. But when Peter and Mary Jane visit first, the fake murderer flees. Peter pursues but then loses him, privately deciding there's no way he's leaving town for his photo assignment now. Finally, the day of MJ's modeling expo arrives, and while Peter secretly stays on the premises, a fake police officer visits MJ and Elise's room and attempts the staged murder. But MJ holds her own, giving the man a strong kick and helps to protect Elise so they can escape. As they run down the stairs, Elise begins to act strangely, and having MJ with her all alone, she pulls out a knife, revealing she has been the mentally ill slasher killer this whole time, targeting models she deemed more attractive. Elise then attacks MJ, but Peter arrives as Spider-Man just in time to stop her. As Elise is brought into custody, Peter holds his wife closely, pondering the future challenges they may face, and all that he still has to learn about love. The next challenge soon surfaces at MJ's photo shoot, when she takes a break and talks to her makeup artist Elvira. Learning that Elvira is an undocumented immigrant who is facing imminent deportation along with her family, Mary Jane feels deep sympathy and provides her phone number for any assistance she might need. But a phone call from the Bugle interrupts as they are looking for Peter, and since her husband is meeting her for lunch, Mary Jane agrees to pass along the assignment to him. Soon, Peter arrives to meet his wife, and their lunchtime discussion turns to finances and the possibility of him returning to school for a better-paying job, which MJ offers to support financially. Then, as MJ passes along the Bugle's assignment, Peter gives her a kiss and rushes off before she can tell him about her co-worker's situation. That evening, Peter returns home, but Mary Jane receives a frantic phone call from Elvira. Learning that she and her family are under attack by a murderous group of pursuers, Peter rushes off to help as Spider-Man. Upon his arrival, he finds their pursuers are thugs who are led by the Tarantula, and while he fights, the Tarantula manages to escape. Though Elvira is safe for now, she and her family are still detained by the NYPD for being undocumented, to Peter's shock. Believing the detainment to be unfair given the circumstances, Peter returns home to tell his wife the bad news, feeling helpless to directly stop it. As Peter laments the situation, Mary Jane hugs him, certain that her husband will find some way to help Elvira and her family, eventually. One evening, to inject some fun into their lives, Mary Jane throws a massive house party, filling their apartment with friends. When Peter's landlord, Mrs. Muggins, storms in, searching for her husband, MJ meets her at the door and invites her to join the party. Then, MJ finds Peter in the kitchen, clearly in over his head attempting to prepare the hors d'oeuvres. She gives him a quick kiss, thanking him for letting her get away with the party, even if he's not as thrilled as she is. Peter simply responds, "It'll be fun," with a distraught look on his face. Then Peter runs straight into Mrs. Muggins, who chastises him about the party and for not saving her any food. But Mary Jane arrives back, announcing she is there to save Peter with a glass of punch, and he wearily chugs it down. After MJ's modeling friends harass Peter for a while, leaving him flustered, the already chaotic party then kicks into high gear when a live band unexpectedly shows up, mortifying him. In response, MJ tries to reassure her husband, urging him to relax. But as the band unleashes a wall of sound, a phone call from Harry Osborn shatters any chance of relaxation, as Peter learns that the Hobgoblin is wreaking havoc in the city. Fearing MJ will be furious if he leaves, Peter covertly speaks to her, promising to only be gone for a few minutes. A conflicted Mary Jane admits she doesn't know whether to hug Peter or kick him. As Peter departs to battle while cartwheeling down the stairs, he chugs another glass of punch and notices he feels strange, even silly. He finds the Hobgoblin and engages in battle, struggling against the villain before finally realizing he's unexpectedly drunk. Fortunately, he takes out the Hobgoblin by sheer luck. Peter returns to the party, demanding to know who spiked the punch, and learns it was Mr. Muggins, who did so in hopes of livening things up a bit. As Mrs. Muggins chases her husband out of the apartment, Peter finally relaxes and lets loose, announcing to everyone that it's time to party. MJ cheerily smiles at her husband and remarks, "You said it, Tiger." Some time later, Mary Jane endures a long day at work, modeling the latest fashions. As the photo shoot finally wraps, she sinks into her chair, remarking that she's exhausted. Then, after complimenting her hairstylist Sandy on her excellent work, MJ calls Peter, leaving a message that they have a chance to get a condo at the much-coveted Bedford Towers, and she's heading there after work to check it out. After the call, MJ remarks that getting used to married life and having to report to her husband is an adjustment, but it helps that Peter is cute. Meanwhile, Peter arrives home and decides to surprise MJ with a special evening, hoping to make up for their cramped living conditions. But as MJ arrives with Sandy, ready for her co-worker to meet her husband, an underdressed Peter ends up getting an embarrassing surprise himself. After Peter quickly slams the door to change into something more appropriate, Sandy looks at MJ giggling that Peter was cute, and MJ adds that he's good for a few laughs too. Later, as the evening turns to night, Sandy leaves wishing the Parkers luck on their apartment hunting. As soon as the door closes, MJ looks at Peter suggestively and asks about dessert. Instantly catching the hint, Peter turns on the charm and takes her to the bedroom. Days later, Peter screws up while out as Spider-Man trying to make extra money and returns home disgusted with himself. Confiding in Mary Jane, he admits he can't believe he put people's lives in danger during a battle with Chance, all for a few extra dollars. But Mary Jane says she can't believe it either. "Do you really think money means that much to me? That I care how much you've got? Peter, you're what's important in my life. You make me happy. And happiness doesn't come with a price tag." While Peter admits he knows this, he explains that his emotions got the better of him. Smiling, MJ says she guesses they'll just have to work a bit harder. As she cuddles up with him in the romantic candlelight, Peter softly agrees, saying he guesses they will. Looking to improve their lives, MJ hires a cleaning lady, and after showing Peter the new drapes, she ensures he's okay with the changes. Peter explains he's fine, except that the villain Chance got away in their last battle. In response, MJ offers they go out clubbing to cheer him up, explaining that parties always work for her. Soon, the Parkers are off to the club, with Peter squirming in the clothes his wife dressed him in. While she tries to get him to relax, he thinks to himself that he's not sure he'll ever get used to MJ's world completely, but it sure is a fun place to visit once in a while. The next morning, Peter snuggles up with his wife in bed, explaining that while the club was great, the reality with Chance is still there. He tells MJ he's got to find the villain that day. MJ says she understands and asks him to please be careful. Sure enough, Peter finds Chance and engages in an explosive battle. At the same time, MJ comes home from a shopping outing, a bit frustrated that it's late, and Peter never called or left her a message that day. As she opens the door, seeing a figure in the dark, she assumes it's Peter. But flicking on the lights, she is instead face-to-face with the nightmarish Venom. Horrified by the encounter, Mary Jane huddles on the floor with tears in her eyes as Peter returns home, dressed in his black costume. Seeing his wife, an alarmed Peter asks her what is wrong, but she yells for him to stay away until it finally dawns on her that it's her husband who now stands before her. Relieved, MJ hugs Peter tightly, recounting her feelings of helplessness as the creature terrified her, saying it was looking for Peter. As Peter gently sets his wife down on the sofa, she pleads that she wants them to stay somewhere else that night. Peter agrees to get a hotel, questioning to himself what could possibly put the strongest woman he knows in such a state of terror. Later, at midnight in a Manhattan hotel room, Peter can't sleep, realizing MJ's description of the creature sounds a lot like his old costume. Then, as MJ wakes, he informs his wife that he thinks he knows who terrorized her and starts to explain how he feels responsible. But MJ tells Peter to hush, saying that when she signed on for better or for worse, she meant it, and they should get some sleep. But good news comes the next morning, when MJ excitedly wakes Peter saying they've been moved to the top of the waiting list for the Bedford Towers condo, and it's theirs if they want it. Given their recent ordeal, the opportunity couldn't have come at a better time. When Peter agrees to go through with the move, MJ gleefully hugs her husband, saying she loves him so much, and then makes calls to prepare for their pre-move visit. Soon, the Parkers visit the Bedford Towers, and Peter is in disbelief at how spacious and nice it is, saying it feels like he's getting his own palace, though he wishes he could help MJ more in paying for it. Seeing that her husband is down, MJ reminds him about her idea regarding him getting into fashion photography. While Peter is hesitant due to lack of experience in that field, MJ decides to pose for him, encouraging Peter as he snaps photos of her. But as Peter role-plays as a fashion photographer, he starts to feel a bit out of his element. Seeing this, MJ drops her blouse, finding a way to help Peter's spirits rise. That evening, the Parkers have their first dinner with Aunt May after their marriage. While Mary Jane helps May with the dishes, she voices her worry that May is distancing herself. May explains that she wants their marriage to work and doesn't want to interfere in any way as a nosy relative. In response, MJ assures May that both she and Peter would be crushed if she dropped out of their lives. Soon, moving day arrives, and Mary Jane has invited all their friends over to help. While she entertains them with snacks, Peter talks job opportunities with Robbie on the balcony, but then catches sight of the black-suited creature swinging by. After this, he immediately departs to fight Venom in their first climactic battle. After finally defeating the villain, Peter returns home to his wife in their new Bedford Towers condo, apologizing for abruptly leaving earlier, but MJ understands, saying she's glad he's okay. When Peter questions why she appears upset, MJ says it's Peter's black costume, explaining that after her Venom encounter, she's not sure she'll ever be comfortable with it. Peter immediately agrees, taking it off and throwing it into the fire, but since he doesn't have his old costume on hand, he wonders what he's supposed to wear. In response, Mary Jane surprises Peter with a store-bought replica of his classic red and blue costume. Holding his wife in the air, Peter joyfully exclaims that she's the greatest. It's not long before Peter and Mary Jane continue their efforts to help MJ's coworker Elvira, who is about to be deported. But when they visit a legal office for assistance, they discover she isn't eligible for their amnesty program. Mary Jane pleads for the office to help Elvira gain eligibility, convinced that if deported, her co-worker will be killed by the tarantula and his thugs. However, the office refuses. As the Parkers return home, they feel hopeless and useless, pondering how the laws sometimes seem so unfair. Meanwhile, the tarantula breaks into the prison cell that Elvira is held in. Out for revenge against Spider-Man, He threatens to kill her family unless she tells him where to find the wall crawler. At the same time, Peter violently wakes from a nightmare of him being all alone, with all his villains closing in. As Mary Jane comforts her husband, he explains how seeing all the scared, undocumented immigrants at the law office must have deeply affected him, as he's been feeling the weight of their desperation. Suddenly, the phone rings, and MJ is shocked to find it's Elvira. Peter grabs the phone and is given the location he's supposed to arrive at. Setting out as Spider-Man, he finds and engages in battle with the tarantula, eventually defeating the villain. But the tarantula's defeat cannot stop the inevitable deportation of Elvira and her family. Deeply saddened, the Parkers watch as they are sent away on a plane. However, with the tarantula and his thugs defeated, the Parkers at least have a small sense of hope for them to be okay in their homeland. One day, after stopping a mugging, Peter returns home frustrated that his only remaining costume is torn. As he attempts to fix it with his poor sewing skills, he hears MJ's voice asking if any tigers are home as she returns from picking up groceries. After a playful exchange and a brief kiss, Peter shows MJ his costume and shoddy repair job. She responds in horror, claiming that among her crowd, the patch-up would be worthy of capital punishment. However, she quickly makes a call, using her modeling connections to order a professional repair by claiming that the suit is for a costume party. Peter smiles and gives MJ a kiss, saying that he knew there was a reason he married her. But as MJ hugs Peter, flirtatiously telling him to show her more, a phone call from Aunt May interrupts, resulting in Peter having to leave to assist, this time not as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. Days later, Mary Jane directs Peter on where to rearrange the furniture in their new condo, as Peter jokes that he could just become a furniture mover as a way to make more money than working for the Bugle. While he effortlessly carries items with his amazing spider strength, Mary Jane suddenly realizes she must leave for a magazine cover shoot, so Peter decides to head out to the university to check out advanced photography courses. As they part, Peter tells MJ to knock him dead at the shoot. But MJ's shoot quickly turns dramatic when a rude coworker makes jabs at her over her year-out-of-fashion hairstyle, and battle lines are drawn. Meanwhile, Peter's day out turns dramatic as well, as he must engage in battle with Silver Sable. Upon returning home that evening, Peter finds they have company, and Mary Jane introduces him to a man named Martin Jacoby. Then, on recommendation by Dr. Connors, Jacoby presents Peter with a job offer as a chief assistant researcher in Kansas. Making a trip to Kansas, Peter is given a tour of the facility, and although it is in a remote location far from home, the job looks great and has excellent pay. Calling Mary Jane, Peter tells her excitedly that the job is everything he hoped for, and that they'll talk more about it when he gets home. But after the call, a concerned Mary Jane puts the phone down, fearing the major impact that this will bring. Soon, as Peter returns to New York, MJ welcomes him with a hug, happy to have him back home. But Peter immediately announces that he wants to take the job and asks MJ what she thinks. A concerned Mary Jane responds that she's been thinking a lot about it, and New York is her home, with all her friends there and her modeling career, and she doesn't know if she's ready to give all that up by moving to Kansas, even if it's to make a dream come true. Then, as they hold hands, the question hangs in the air, and the Parkers are unsure of what to do next. As Peter swings home the following evening, a realization hits him. He's been acting like he's single, not married to someone whose thriving modeling career depends on New York. Realizing he should be less worried about himself and more about his wife, Peter walks in on a sleeping Mary Jane, lying in front of the blaring TV. As he clicks the TV off, MJ wakes, saying she was trying to wait up for him but fell asleep. Then, Peter reports he had no luck taking any photos he could sell to the Bugle. As the young couple tenderly hold each other, the conversation turns back to Peter's job offer. Peter admits he would never ask MJ to give up so much if the job wasn't exactly what he'd hoped for all his life. MJ gives Peter a caring smile, suggesting they go to bed and worry about it the following day, to which he gladly agrees. However, the next day Mary Jane isn't fully present at work, and while on break, she realizes that she must come to a decision. Dwelling on how much she loves her job, the glamour, the excitement, the prestige, the fun, she questions how she can trade it all away. Does she really love Peter that much? Soon after returning home, an anxious Mary Jane finds Peter is not there to talk, and unable to bear waiting any longer, she concludes she'll have to make a decision on her own. Then, deciding no matter how unpleasant it may be, she begins to hurriedly pack her bags in frustration. Finally, Peter gets home. Upon seeing all the packed bags, he is shocked, questioning if Mary Jane decided to leave him. As his wife walks into the room, he asks if she's going somewhere, to which MJ confirms she's going with him to Kansas. In response, Peter claims her decision means a lot to him, but it actually makes what he has to say even easier. He explains, "The most important thing to me is you, and the most important thing for us is our marriage." So I've decided to go back to school and get a job here. Relieved they are not moving, MJ pretends to faint dramatically in Peter's arms. As he holds her, Peter retorts that his wife didn't actually faint, but she asks if they could pretend she did, and enjoying being carried in her husband's arms, she adds that it's kind of fun. However, trouble soon arises when Tombstone gets out of prison and attacks Joe Robertson, sending him to the hospital with severe injuries. Soon after, as the Parkers visit Robertson, Mary Jane makes a loud and exuberant entrance into the hospital room in an attempt to lighten the mood. Peter objects to her humor, explaining that he doesn't think the Robertsons are in a mood for it, but MJ quietly retorts for him to not be a spoilsport, claiming that everyone likes a good yuck when they're sick. However, Robbie's wife, Martha, is simply glad to see their guests. Greeting Robbie, MJ gives him a small peck on the cheek, playfully questioning when else would she get a chance to plant a smacker on the guy without him running away. But when Robbie asks to talk to Peter alone, MJ takes Martha to the hall, listening caringly as Martha breaks down in tears, fearing that her husband's body isn't the only thing broken, but his spirit is too. When the Parkers depart, Mary Jane notices Peter looks grim, and upon questioning if he's okay, she learns that while they have the evidence to put Tombstone away for good, Robbie asked Peter to destroy it because Tombstone threatened his family. As a result, Peter is now unsure of what to do. Later at home, as Peter plays aloud the recording that exposes Tombstone and details his victims and their deaths, MJ tries to distract herself. When the recording ends and Peter questions what she thinks, she asks if they can talk about something else, adding that if it were up to her, she'd burn the tape. Startled, Peter questions her apparent lack of care about the things Tombstone has done. But Mary Jane admits she hasn't thought about anything else since Robbie was hurt, and she's deeply scared. Then, telling Peter to do what's right, she pleads that he leave her out of it because she can't handle it. Kissing his wife and saying that he loves her, Peter departs, vowing to leave it up to Robbie. As he leaves, Mary Jane admits she loves Peter so much that the thought of losing him is more than she can stand, and this life is scaring her more than she ever guessed it would. But MJ's fears are warranted when, shortly after, Tombstone suddenly appears looking for Peter at their home, leaving MJ with a painful injury. Then, while Peter talks to Robbie at the hospital, a nurse finds him, saying his wife is hurt and has been admitted to the emergency room. Panicked, Peter then runs out of the room to see her. Moments later, Peter finds a terrified Mary Jane in the emergency room with a cast around her arm. Upon seeing each other, they run to hold one another, relieved, as Peter thinks to himself, "I love her more than life." MJ explains what happened, adding that after bringing her to the hospital, Tombstone said that Peter would be next. Suddenly, a nurse announces Peter has a phone call. When he picks it up, it's Tombstone who asks, "How's the wife?" In response, Peter scoffs, calling him a creep. Then, Tombstone tells Peter where to meet him next, but unknowingly, he also just told Spider-Man where to find him. As a result, Peter goes on to fight the villain, brutally taking him down. As the newlyweds' lives continue, Peter is out dealing with the cult of love, while MJ gets a visit from her high school friend Lorraine. As MJ welcomes her friend inside, she explains that she used to take notes from Lori in developing her party girl image. Carefully navigating Lori through the condo to ensure Peter's secret identity isn't discovered, MJ tries to make the visit smooth. As the night wears on and Peter remains absent, Lori suggests that she head home. But MJ is committed to ensuring Peter meets her friend, so she suggests Lori sleepover. MJ takes the sofa, and the night passes with Lori briefly waking her while using the restroom. Eventually, the next day arrives, and Mary Jane has to pretend that Peter came by and left early in order to explain his absence. However, as Lori shows Mary Jane her risque lingerie shoot photos, MJ is stunned by their beauty. This leads Lori to inform MJ of a $5,000 deal for her to do a similar photo shoot. Excited by the offer, MJ exclaims, "Wheel of Fortune, here I come." Soon, they go to the studio for some test shots, but feeling uncomfortable with the extremely risque attire, Mary Jane starts to have cold feet. She then decides against taking the photos until she's had a chance to talk to Peter, leaving Lori a bit embarrassed after setting it all up. However, MJ soon gets a call from Peter and tells him she was offered a job opportunity and isn't sure if she should take it. But before she can tell him all the details, Peter gets occupied, and telling MJ she can make the decision herself, he abruptly ends the call. Feeling frustrated by Peter's near constant unavailability over the past day, Mary Jane decides to take Peter's word and go through with it, despite him not knowing what the job entails. Then, arriving back at the studio, Mary Jane drops her robe, announcing that the original party girl is back as she begins the shoot. Meanwhile, Peter finally swings home, but MJ isn't there. Then, in an ironic twist of fate, Peter gets a call and abruptly leaves just before she returns home, preventing her from telling him about the photos. Later, Aunt May makes an unexpected visit to the Parkers' home, and while Mary Jane is in the shower, she tells May to make herself comfortable. Thinking how lucky her nephew is to have a wife like Mary Jane, May then stumbles upon an envelope. Opening it, May is shocked to see Mary Jane's racy photos and accidentally knocks a plan off the table. After Mary Jane gets out of the shower, she tells May not to worry about the plan and attempts to casually explain the photos while grabbing them. But May pries, asking if Peter knows about them, and in response, MJ claims that Peter supports all her career decisions. However, Aunt May continues that she hopes Mary Jane would never do anything to hurt or embarrass Peter, stoking MJ's guilty conscience. Then, realizing she doesn't want those type of photos, Mary Jane burns them on the stove. Afterward, May affirms that MJ is a good girl and her nephew is lucky, and as May steps away to get dessert, MJ sighs in relief. Some time later, Peter returns home, and as soon as he enters, Mary Jane rushes into his arms, as she has been worried about him all night. After explaining that he busted up a drug operation at a warehouse, MJ confirms that is exactly what she had feared. She then shows him a news report about how the crooks that Spider-Man webbed up were murdered, and the police are now looking to arrest him. As a result, Peter must set out to find the real killers and clear his name. In the coming days, as Mary Jane unpacks clothes in her giant new closet, Peter suddenly startles her by playfully popping his head upside down from the doorway, apologetically claiming that he couldn't help himself. Shocked, MJ retorts that Peter will have trouble existing if he tries that again. But an excited Peter eagerly tells his wife the news. He's going on a book tour to Los Angeles for Webb's, his published photo book of Spider-Man. When MJ tells Peter she'd like to go with him, he is thrilled and gives her a loving kiss. Days later, as the Parkers depart for LA, MJ meets the owner of the Bedford Towers in the hall, who introduces himself as Jonathan Caesar, claiming to be a huge fan. After he invites her over for tea, MJ responds that both she and Peter would be delighted to visit him after their trip, introducing her husband before they take the elevator to depart. On their way to LA, Peter finds that he is unable to stop smiling, and upon their arrival, the Parkers catch a limo provided by the book tour's publicity firm. As they look around from the vehicle, Peter finds his wife is quite familiar with the area due to her modeling career. When the trip planner asks if the Parkers would like to do anything that afternoon, Peter perks up, causing MJ to fear the eager look in his eyes. Not long after, she finds herself side by side with her husband, cringing as she plummets down Splash Mountain at Disneyland. As the newlyweds enjoy their day out, Peter explains as a kid he was so serious as a student that he didn't have much time for fun. Taking Peter by the arm, MJ responds sympathetically that she doesn't mind playing mommy once in a while, as she brings her husband to get some mouse ears. Later that evening, the Parkers attend a charity gala at the Civic Center, and Mary Jane takes the lead as they enter, looking stunning in her dress. But when Peter spots the Black Fox attempting a robbery, he tells MJ to mingle, while he makes a quick exit to stop him. However, as he pursues the villain, Peter gets blinded by a smoke blast and inadvertently stumbles back into the crowd as Spider-Man. As he chokes, unable to explain why both Peter Parker and Spider-Man would be on the West Coast, Mary Jane is quick to cover for him, announcing the Amazing Spider-Man as a surprise guest appearance for the event. Then, after MJ discreetly whispers for her husband to play along, Peter is forced to attend to the crowd delaying his pursuit of the Black Fox. Unfortunately, a valuable chalice gets stolen while Spidey signs autographs, and after turning to his wife, Peter explains that the Black Fox got away. While Peter worries about the bad press Spider-Man will get, MJ says his best bet is to retrieve the chalice the next day. However, the next day comes, and Peter fails to track down the villain. Later, while at the beach, Mary Jane asks Peter if he would like a swim, but he is feeling down, and instead, he confides in her about his wasted effort. In response, MJ suggests Peter relax and focus on his book tour, explaining that he can't solve the whole world's problems. Then, she playfully coaxes him into a race. As Peter takes pursuit, he puts aside his worries and enjoys his time at the beach. Afterward, Peter finishes his book tour with his wife standing proudly by his side, even securing a last-minute feature on a late-night talk show, which Mary Jane finds thrilling. As Peter explains the irony of being famous for his Spidey photos, but unable to make a good living selling them anymore, breaking news interrupts, leading him back on the trail of the Black Fox. After stopping the villain and retrieving the stolen chalice, the Black Fox pleads to be let go, swearing to never steal again. Concerned that jail would kill the elderly villain, Peter has a crisis of conscience and lets him go free in sympathy. The next day, as the Parkers travel to the airport, Mary Jane watches the news that the chalice was found, proudly exclaiming to her husband how things worked out. However, at the same time, the black fox flies back home, laughing as he mocks the gullibility of the wall crawler. Back in New York, Peter returns home, knocking on the door while claiming his hands are full, and when Mary Jane opens it, he surprises her, holding a single rose in both hands. Seeing this, MJ jokes that he must have had to use all his spider strength to haul it upstairs, and when Peter holds her saying he saved some of his strength for later, she purrs seductively. But the Parkers are interrupted by Jonathan Caesar, who welcomes MJ home by gifting her a huge bouquet. Then, after inviting the Parkers to a party that Friday, he takes his leave while kissing MJ's hand. In response, Peter drops his rose in disgust, asking himself if he should throw up now or wait until later. Then, he questions if Caesar's flowers are going to go in the vase. But MJ responds that Jonathan's bouquet will go to the cleaning lady, and only Peter's rose will go in the vase, adding that she believes in only keeping the important things. In response, Peter holds his wife, asking if he told her he loves her, to which MJ playfully retorts, "Not for minutes." That Thursday, the Parkers head to Cleveland for Peter's book tour signing. There, a young fan approaches Peter for an autograph, accidentally spilling comic books from his backpack. As Peter hands the fan one of his comics, he reveals he had it as a kid and had a crush on the girl in the miniskirt in it, prompting MJ to smirk while listening. Upon leaving, the fan reveals he's selling them at the comic convention next door and thanks Peter for the autograph. Later, as Peter performs his book signing, Mary Jane shocks him, surprising him with that very comic book as a present. When Peter exclaims that it must have cost a fortune, she playfully jokes that it was to show that she isn't jealous of the other woman, while leaning over the desk to give him a kiss. The next day, the Parkers return to New York and receive a brief visit from Aunt May before their party, with Jonathan Caesar. Before it begins, Peter quickly leaves to drop off his paper for his studentship grant at ESU, where he takes on the villain humbug before swiftly returning to attend the party. There, Peter finds a man trying to impose himself on Mary Jane. After telling the man to stop harassing his wife, Peter effortlessly defends her against the man's lame attempts to fight. Once Caesar has the man kicked out, Mary Jane suggests they call it an early night, explaining they're tired from their travels. She mentions Peter has another book tour Monday while she attends a modeling gig in town. As the Parkers leave, Caesar plots his evil plan, vowing to make Mary Jane his. That weekend, the newlyweds perform their weekly grocery shopping when they are suddenly interrupted by a woman who wants Mary Jane to sign the cover of Shape magazine that she's featured on. Unfortunately for Peter, he is completely misrecognized, and when he tries to correct the woman, she thinks he is being rude and indignantly leaves the store. In response, the Parkers laugh at the spectacle and return home. As they put away the groceries, Jonathan Caesar stops by again, to Peter's dismay. Suspicious of Caesar, Peter uses his powers to covertly spy on him as Caesar offers MJ his help if she should need anything while Peter is away. But Caesar briefly spots Peter peeking from behind a doorway and quickly leaves. On to Peter. MJ asks him if he's jealous, and while claiming he isn't, he proves otherwise when he crushes a can of soda, which explodes into his face. Then, as Mary Jane assures her husband that he has nothing to worry about, Caesar returns to his place where he has a shrine dedicated to her, obsessed with her image. That Monday, however, after Mary Jane finishes up her scheduled photo shoot, she returns home to the smell of cigarettes and discovers 2 intruders in her home. Then, as Caesar reveals himself from the shadows, she is taken. Soon, Peter returns home to discover the terrible news that his wife is missing. As the police depart, Peter is left alone, reflecting on the fact that his greatest fear has just come true. He then grabs his mask and sets out to find Mary Jane. Meanwhile, Caesar shows off his collection of statues to her, bragging that he has provided MJ with the most elegant of wardrobes and gourmet food. What else could she want? Retorting that she'd like a .357 Magnum or 2, MJ slaps Caesar when he attempts to caress her. But Caesar hits her back, claiming that it hurt him more than it did her, and then reveals his obsession with Mary Jane, explaining that he's gotten everything that he's wanted his whole life, except her. He then reveals he was the one who moved the Parkers to the top of the Bedford Towers waiting list and asks her to adjust to her new reality as he plans for them to get married. As Caesar leaves MJ lying on the floor with a bloody nose, she prays that Peter will find her. Meanwhile, Peter tries everything he can to find Mary Jane, but is unable to. He returns home all alone to what was once a paradise, now hating the cold walls of the Bedford Towers condo without the warmth of his wife. Unknown to him, Mary Jane is only a few floors down, sitting with Caesar as he attempts to have dinner with her. Mary Jane thinks Caesar is insane, and as she tries to explain to him that she's already married, Caesar dismisses it, persisting that their wedding night is imminent. Horrified, MJ attempts to escape by throwing ice in Caesar's face and runs from the room. However, she runs right into his security guards. As Caesar catches up with her, he pulls out a knife, threatening to use it if she ever tries to escape again. Afterward, Caesar learns that Spider-Man has been searching the city for Mary Jane, so he hires the supervillain Styx and Stone to deal with the wall crawler. After Caesar sends the supervillains after Spider-Man, MJ hatches another plan to escape, fearing for her husband's safety. This time, she holds her own. Proving she is no damsel in distress, she whacks Caesar in the face with a lamp and then uses the broken item to successfully electrocute his guards. Then, grabbing a handgun from them, she makes her escape on her own. Just before Styx and Stone can put an end to Spider-Man, Mary Jane saves him just in the nick of time, firing the handgun at them as they flee. Relieved to see his wife is okay, Peter hugs her passionately. MJ then says she'll go to the police while Peter swings off to change. Later at home, while Caesar is arrested, Peter thanks MJ for saving him, ashamed he wasn't the one protecting her. MJ assures Peter her abduction was not his fault, and that the bottom line is they have to help and protect each other. That's what being in love is all about. The Parkers then share an intimate kiss, happy to be back together. However, it's not all roses, as Peter is late to his planned dinner with his wife one evening, due to being out as Spider-Man. Peter finally arrives, much to MJ's relief, as she's been fending off men at the bar while waiting for him. As Peter apologizes and asks if the men were bothering her, MJ brushes it off, claiming to not even have worked up a sweat. After ordering a drink for her husband, Mary Jane listens as Peter shares how overwhelmed he's been lately. In response, she kisses him and offers an early night to go home and snuggle in bed. Unfortunately, a news broadcast of a Punisher sighting in Texas ends their plans. Since Peter has been searching for the vigilante, he immediately ditches dinner to catch a plane to go after him. After he leaves, the men at the bar attempt to approach Mary Jane again, but annoyed, she makes it clear that she will be eating alone, and so will they. As the men stumble off, MJ broods, trying her best not to be too angry over Peter's departure. After returning to New York, Peter rescues an apparent Gwen Stacy clone as Spider-Man, but upon seeing the wall crawler, she escapes, fleeing in terror. Back home, Peter finds an old photo album while thinking about Gwen with mixed emotions. After just a few minutes of looking at it, he starts feeling depressed, just as Mary Jane returns home. Holding up her latest outfit from a photo shoot, MJ declares it loot, while attempting to show her husband, but stops when noticing that it looks like he's seen a ghost. He then reveals Gwen Stacy is back, showing her the photos he's been looking at, as he privately wishes Gwen didn't matter to him anymore, and wishes she would just stay dead. Soon, Mary Jane grows upset by Gwen's apparent return, claiming that she never stood a chance with Peter when Gwen was alive, and while listing all of Gwen's good qualities, refers to herself as a cheap date in comparison. As Peter tries to tell her otherwise, MJ continues, claiming that if Gwen was the beauty queen, she was the pinup girl. But Peter assures Mary Jane that this Gwen is only a clone, claiming that he's gotten over Gwen's death. He says she's only a memory. Then, holding MJ, he declares that she's the only one that he loves. But as Peter kisses his wife, a voice in his head accuses him of not telling her the whole truth. Suddenly, the doorbell interrupts, and when Peter opens it, it's Gwen. Rushing into Peter's arms, Gwen sees that he is wearing a Spider-Man costume under his robe, and horrified by it, she runs back out of the Parkers' home. As Peter scrambles to go after her, Mary Jane points out that he still loves her, and in response, Peter admits that he's confused, but so is the clone, and she needs help. Telling her husband to go to help Gwen, MJ adds that when he's done, he should come back to her with a clear heart. Eventually, Peter is led to the High Evolutionary Submarine where he battles the young gods and finds the Gwen clone, rescuing her. After Peter hugs her, saying she is safe, he then pulls away, saying that no matter what he felt for the original Gwen Stacy, she's dead, and he is now in love with someone else. As the Gwen clone pleads for Peter not to leave her, he assures her that he'll get her help once he gets answers. Soon, they learn from the High Evolutionary that she is not truly a Gwen Stacy clone, but a genetically modified woman who was altered to think she was Gwen Stacy. Then, the daydreamer of the young gods uses her powers to revert the woman back to her old self, and she returns to live her life. Realizing this whole experience has helped him sort out his feelings, Peter then returns home. There, Peter can finally admit the whole truth to Mary Jane, and after telling her that Gwen Stacy is gone, she asks if he still loves her, and he confirms that he does. However, Peter admits to Mary Jane that he loves her more than he ever loved Gwen, and while he still loves and misses Gwen, she's dead. He then declares that while Gwen was his past, MJ is his future. Holding her husband lovingly, MJ says to forget the future, she'd rather live right now. Then, Affirming that the present moment is all they ever have, Peter kisses his wife passionately, adding that the moment is enough. More than enough. Soon, Peter must once again depart for his Webb's book tour. Tired of the constant travel, he calls MJ to vent about his terrible day, saying he may strangle someone if forced to appear on another talk show. In response, MJ simply says, "I love you" to her husband, which makes Peter realize how much he misses his wife, after just one day apart. Later, while Peter is still away on his tour, Mary Jane rushes out of her home, late for a modeling assignment as she had been waiting for Peter to make a promised call. Unfortunately, the call never happened, and now she is both late and worried as she rushes toward her ride. Suddenly, a girl bumps into MJ, causing her to fall, and cursing her terrible day. MJ opens her eyes to find that the girl is her younger cousin, Christy Watson. Shocked by Christy's unexpected appearance, Mary Jane listens as Christy says that her mother must have forgotten to send the letter, but she's there to announce that she's going to move in with the Parkers until Easter. In response, an alarmed MJ privately thinks that her bad day just turned into a full-fledged nightmare. However, before Christy moves in, Peter soon returns home, and upon unmasking, his spider sense abruptly goes off. Hiding on the ceiling, he watches as Mary Jane lets a man out the door, and upon asking her who is the man, Peter startles his wife. She informs Peter that he was the locksmith, and due to the Caesar incident, she got the locks changed. As MJ hands her husband his new keys, the couple get romantic, but Peter remembers he must go to ESU for his class registration, cutting the moment short. In celebration of his return to grad school, Mary Jane suggests that they go out to a movie, and afterward, she has a great idea for a sort of special dessert. That evening after their date, Mary Jane notices Peter is lost in thought and asks what's on his mind. Making up the excuse that he's depressed about having homework again, Peter eventually says he's restless and will go get some ice cream, promising to meet his wife at home afterward. After MJ hesitates, agreeing suspiciously, he stops and admits that he lied. The truth is that his spider sense warned him earlier, and he wanted to go back to ESU to investigate, adding that he didn't want MJ to worry. MJ replies she will worry, but she loves Peter for respecting her enough to tell her the truth. Peter responds, "And I love you for being you." Then, MJ tells her husband to take care as she kisses him goodbye.